Welcome to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. In this episode, we're going to be talking about football video games, but in particular, FIFA. Because this is an episode which so many of you have requested that I write, so I finally have got round to writing it. Before we get into the episode, I've got a birthday shout out to do and a few of your shout outs and messages. So, a massive happy birthday to Jacob, who is a massive fan of the podcast and was 6 years old just the other day on the 8th of July. So a huge happy birthday to you for then, Jacob. I hope you had a wonderful day spending time with your friends and family, and I'm sure you got something football related. And the first message on this episode says, "Hi Darren, my name is Chris and I'm 7. I support Liverpool. I've just started listening to your podcast. I really like your Sadio Mane episode. Could you please make an episode about Alisson Becker or Jordan Henderson, please?" Well, Chris, you'll be pleased to know that both of those names are on the very long list of episodes that I've still got to write. And I will get round to writing those like I did with this one, and I'm sure they will be really interesting players to look into and to speak about. Thank you very much for your message, and thank you for being a listener. I really do appreciate it. And the next one says, "Hi, we love your podcast and wanted to send you a message. Can we have a shout out to my friends Eddie, Archie, Noah and Lewis from Cheltenham? We play football together every day at school. I love listening to the podcast and my favourite episode is the Messi one. And that is from Ruben, who's age 7. Well, thank you very much for your message, Ruben. Thank you for being a continued listener of the podcast, and a massive shout out to you and all of your mates that you play football with and everybody you know who loves football. Make sure you tell them about Football for Kids. And the next one is a massive shout out to a big fan of the podcast, and that is James Howard, who's aged 6 years old and is a huge football fan, a massive football fanatic. James's dad Chris tells me that he thinks James has got some sort of future in football because he is so positively obsessed with it you wouldn't believe. Well, whatever you want to do in football, James, you set yourself a goal. Make sure you're passionate about it, and I'm sure you'll get there because it sounds like you really know your stuff. And the last one says, "Dear Darren, my name is Joshua and I'm 6 years old. I'm from Southampton and I play for AFC Stoneham. I'm a Crystal Palace fan. Please may you do a podcast on Zaha. Thank you." And that is from Joshua from Southampton. Well, Joshua, lucky you, because just the other week we released the episode on Wilfried Zaha, so I hope that you really enjoyed that one, and what a story he had. Just a reminder that there are so many messages coming in that it's taking about 2 to 3 months to get round to the messages which you send. So please don't let that put you off. If you send them now, in a couple of months' time, 3 months' time, they will be read out on the podcast. So, if you want to send a shout out in or a message, you can ask an adult to send an email to footballforkidspodcast@gmail.com. Let's get into the episode about video games, but in particular, the brilliant video game, FIFA. Video games are a big deal, and football video games have been popular for a very long time. Almost any football-loving person has played a football video game at least once in their life. But when did it all start? How have things changed? And what does the future of football video games look like? Football video games go back around 35 years. And over the years, there have been so many games made you wouldn't believe it. Some of the adults listening may remember games such as The Sensible World of Soccer from 1992, Pro Evolution Soccer, and other games like FIFA Street. I've got to tell you, FIFA Street was one of my favourites. My brother-in-law had a copy and I didn't stop playing it. Oh, it was amazing. Probably the most successful football game of all time has been the FIFA game, which will now be called EA Sports FC. The first ever of the FIFA games to be released was 30 years ago, and it was called FIFA International Soccer. The graphics back then, well, they were a little bit naff. On FIFA International Soccer, all the players looked exactly the same except for their kits, and they moved in straight lines, and when they got a ball, a random star would appear under their feet. The game was really popular, and back in those days, not that many people had video game consoles, but reports suggest that the first ever FIFA sold well over 500,000 copies in just the first 2 weeks. Since that first game, there have been over 40 other games released, including lots of World Cup games which were really popular. One of the first ever FIFA World Cup game was FIFA 98, The Road to the World Cup, which had a picture of England's David Beckham on the cover, and it sold well over 1 million copies. One of the biggest things and most exciting things when a new FIFA game is to be released is who is set to be on the front cover. And I've got to tell you, there have been some cracking covers and players on the front covers of the game over the years, including the amazing Dennis Bergkamp in 1998, Thierry Henry in 2002, Rooney and Ronaldinho for a double-player cover in 2005, and then on the 2023 game, history was made when Chelsea and Australia's Sam Kerr became the first ever female player to feature on the global cover of the game. The next FIFA cover, well, EA Sports cover, will be a bit of a first, as it's got loads of players on it, including Alexia Putellas, Vinicius Jr., Erling Haaland, Jude Bellingham, Marcus Rashford, and loads of others. Not only has the game's graphics improved dramatically over the last 30 years, but what we know the game to be able to do now is very, very different to how it was in 1993. Back then, other than travelling in a certain direction, you could basically just press a button to pass, tackle and shoot. As the years went by, little bits and pieces were added to make the game what it has become today. It took 8 years from its release to have the club's logos on it, and in the same year the game introduced a power bar for how hard you wanted your shots to be. A year later, in 2002, FIFA introduced power bars for passes, and 3 years after that, you could create your own player for the first time. Nowadays, the graphics are simply incredible, and at a first glance, you could be watching a real game on television. Some people are really good at FIFA, and when I say they're really good, it's crazy how good they are. Some of the best FIFA players in the world battle it out in a competition called the FIFA E World Cup. The overall winner last year won a lot of money. The winner took away the World Championship trophy and $250,000. Yes, that's right, $250,000 for being the best in the world on the game. Not only is the prize money big for a video game tournament, but the attention that this pulls in is absolutely phenomenal. The final of last year's game has been watched on YouTube over 500,000 times, and when the game was being played, there was an audience full of people watching. Football video games have been a big part of people's lives for a long time. Last year, the game sold around 14.4 million copies, and the new game is set to sell even more. I hope that you've enjoyed listening and learning about the video game FIFA. So, remember, if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about Football for Kids. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.